So we'll start off with how awesome 2020 was actually for our family and how blessed we were in 2020. So I had an awesome job at Ride Systems to begin the year off, and we were merging with larger companies, which gave us opportunities for more benefits and bonuses and all sorts of stuff. And we had gotten enough money that when Savannah had learned that she was accepted into the dental hygiene program in March, we weren't stressed at all about paying for it because we had enough money in our savings from that job to be able to pay for her program without taking out a loan, which was a huge stress relief. And so that was March. And then in June, I was let go from that company. And the very next day, I found a job and started working at Bingham's Custom Meats with Nathan and Shar. And that was a huge relief to have a job the next day and be able to have growth opportunity there and do that type of stuff. And to be honest, when I started there, I was just thinking, you know what, I'm going to have a job. And maybe in the meantime, if it doesn't feel like a good fit, I'll just start working somewhere else. And it has turned out to be almost my dream job because I've been able to actually use what I learned in school and stuff that I enjoy doing, making videos, doing digital media, doing print media, doing marketing, doing all sorts of stuff. So this job at Bingham's has been almost like one of the hugest blessings that we've been able to have this far. And then on September 28th, I met with the doctor here in town, and we came to the conclusion that I probably should have a colonoscopy due to the symptoms that I was having. And so I met with her, and then because of COVID and everything, I wasn't able to have a colonoscopy until November 3rd. So exactly 6 months ago, I went in for my colonoscopy, and I remember coming out. I remember that it didn't seem very long that I was under sedation. And I remember coming out, and I was like, oh, well, felt quick for some reason. And I remember looking over, and my dad was there with me. He drove me down. And then I remember looking up, and I saw a nurse to my right and the doctor at the end of my bed. And basically the doctor just said, he had a piece of paper in his hand, and he said, so I have to tell you that you have cancer. And I didn't. And immediately my reaction was, okay, I need to tell Savannah. So I called Savannah. She was in class here at the house. She was in our online class, and I remember telling her, I just said, hey, I just found out that I have cancer, and we'll go from there. So that same day we got home, I had called everybody or texted everybody, and that was like an immediate like knee-jerk reaction. Like, everybody needs to know, and I want them to hear it from me. So those phone calls may have been a little rushed, or those text messages may have been rushed, but I felt like everybody needed to know that cared about Savannah and cared about me and my boys. So I tried within that day, in the next few days, I tried letting everybody know, hey, just so you know, this is our situation right now. There's nothing that we really need, but I wanted you to know so that you can react however you see fit. Because I don't know if somebody I love had that happen, I'd want to know about it. And then we met with the surgeon later that day, that same day, November 3rd, and then we scheduled a surgery for November 11th. Same day, Walker turned 5 years old. So we had the surgery. They removed my sigmoid colon. They removed my appendix. They removed some lymph nodes. And then I had Thanksgiving and a little bit of time to recover. So then on December 4th, I met with the oncologist, and Dr. Stinnett down at Utah Cancer Specialists, and that's when stuff got real for Savannah and myself. I didn't realize at the time how severe everything was. I figured, you know, we're gonna have surgery, we're gonna do a little bit of chemo, maybe some radiation. I don't have a clue. But it's not that big of a deal. It's just colon cancer, we're gonna get through it. But I didn't realize, he said, so you're stage 4. It's metastasized in your liver. And so we've taken out the immediate site, the sigmoid colon, we've taken the tumor out of that area. But it's in your liver and it's all over from what we can see. Definitely on the right lobe and the left lobe. So how we're gonna combat it is with chemo. And I remember thinking, you know what, there's a lot of great people that have gone through chemo. There's no reason for me not to try it. I did have a choice. I could have decided, you know what, we don't need to do chemo. And so I asked him, I said, so what happens if I don't do chemo? And he said, you'll have about 7 to 8 months to live, and your liver will shut down, you'll go jaundice, you'll end up in the hospital, you'll be pretty loopy, and then you'll die. He said it won't be painful, but that's how it's gonna happen. And I said, okay, let's do chemo. And I said, okay, so we do chemo, what are we looking at? And he said 2 to 3 years is what we're trying to tack on. And I was just thinking, man, Walker just turned 5, so 2 to 3 years. If I get 3 years out of this, I'll be able to baptize Walker. That will be awesome. I'll be happy with that. And so that's kind of the way Savannah and I directed a lot of our decisions and our discussions around life were based on the next 2 to 3 years. We were planning vacations. We bought a new car with the money, some money that we had saved. We put a pretty big down payment on a really nice car, and it was just, we needed a new car, but we didn't need that car, you know? And so we were kind of just like, oh, okay, we're gonna do this. We went to Moab in February because it was like, we need to make memories. That's what our decisions were based around. And then we have planned a trip to Atlanta in August, and we are looking forward to that. And it was just like, okay, how do we make memories, and how do we plan around this type of stuff, or treatments and all that stuff. And so Savannah, with COVID, it's actually been a huge blessing. Again, kind of bizarre, but our family has benefited hugely from this pandemic in one way. So she was able to do online classes, which meant that she got to come with me to chemo. So starting December, well, I had my port place on December 10th. So I've got a port here that they can access, which means I don't have track marks on my arm from being accessed or having my blood drawn and all that stuff. So starting December 15th and every other Tuesday, I go in for chemo. The typical cancer patient, according to Dr. Stinnett, gets 2 chemo medications if they're gonna combat it. If they're gonna be aggressive, they get 3. And this all depends on age and severity and of the cancer and everything. To combat ours, he decided to go with 4, which is kind of their max out on chemo. And so I didn't realize it at the time, how I just figured chemo's chemo. But we learned a lot really fast on the different types of chemo and the different ways they use it to combat cancer. So anyway, I got about 2 cycles in, and my story was just not lining up with everybody else's that had gone through it. I remember thinking, well, this guy had it, but he was still working. And I got it, and I'm laying here on the couch thinking I am miserable. I can do nothing. The fatigue was insane. Like I've been tired, but I've not been tired to the point that my legs do not work, or that I have like throbbing pain in my legs because they're so tired. It was just like unreal. Like my major muscles didn't want to work. And that was kind of like a shock to my system. And the other side effects that I had was my hair started falling out about the 2nd to 3rd cycle. They said it would thin out. And I guess I have really thick hair or something, I don't know. But I remember standing in the shower and just pulling clumps of hair out, and then pulling a lot of hair out of the drain, and it wasn't me the whole time, so I gotta make sure Savannah she pulled hair out of the drains for me too. And on my pillowcase, and ended up in all my hats, and so, you know, and I said, forget this, we'll just shave it. And so I shaved my head with some clippers, and then my arm hair just started falling out, my leg hair, and then I got to the point where I had no armpit hair. It was just like super bizarre. And so those are some side effects. And then the irinotecan, that is my least favorite thing, because I know exactly what's going to happen now. From when they infuse it. So I'll sit there, about a half hour in, my nose will start to run, and it doesn't help that you have to wear a mask at the clinic. So my nose will start to run, and then everything, you get all that condensation in there, and then my eyes start to water, and it feels like you almost have too much water in your face. It's just gonna just explode. And you just have a crazy amount of pressure in there, and then your ears start to hurt. And then I just hate that one so much. And my sense of smell like heightened like 10 times. I felt like there's so many of these like side effects that relate to pregnancy. At least with Savannah's pregnancies, it was just like, man, I sound like a pregnant guy. But yeah, so we went through that. And then we have a shot. Every Thursday we'll go back and we'll do our disconnect from the pump. So anyway, we go to chemo on Tuesday. We'll get there at about 9:30, 9 o'clock. They try to make an early appointment for us. And then we'll stay there till about 3:30, 4 o'clock. So it's like an all-day event. Savannah would go down with me. She'd spend time in class, go out, get us lunch, come back. She would eat lunch with me, and then maybe hang out the rest of the time. And then we'd make our way home. But when I went home, my port was still accessed, and they had XFU in a pump that was on just like in a little fanny pack that was on my side for the next 46 hours. And so showering with that thing on is a pain in the butt, and you're trying not to get this wet, so you put something over it, and then when you take it off, your skin's sensitive, so you have red marks everywhere. Anyway, that part sucks. And then the first night, I can't sleep. So Tuesday into Wednesday night, like, you get into a routine on these treatments to where you know what's gonna happen when, basically. And so Tuesday night, I could fall asleep, I'd fall asleep, wake up about an hour or two later, and feel like somebody had just punched me in the nose, and then it would just like drain through your whole body. It's just like you could feel like it just tingle. And then I'd wake up with like leg fatigue, and then I'd fall asleep, and then I'd wake up in the next morning and feel pretty good for about 2 to 3 hours. Time enough to shower, eat breakfast, and then sit down, and then I'd just fall asleep. I just zonked out like the rest of the day. And then Thursday felt okay in the mornings, and then we'd go down, get a do the disconnect, and then after the disconnect, I'd get a shot of Udenyca. That shot is what boosts your platelets and your white blood cells so that you can keep, basically what you do is you take your body and you drive it down, and then you bring it back up with all these medications, and then you drive it down again. So it's just crazy, the cycle that you put your body through. And it's amazing what your body can go through without completely shutting down. So anyway, they put me on all that stuff, and it was basically because I'm 29 years old and I'm in good health. I'm in good shape. And so we started off, you'll start your dosage off, and it depends on your height and weight, and all that stuff. And so they come off with this dosage. So for the first 4 cycles, I was at 100%. For the 5th and 6th, they dropped it down because it was just getting too hard. So recovery days, I was ending up, by my 4th cycle, I had about 1 or 2 solid days of recovery to where I could feel like it was good. And so recovery I'd go maybe Saturday night, Sunday, Monday I would feel a little bit better, like solid days of I feel pretty normal. And then I'd go back on Tuesday and get chemo again. And so it was like a 12-day recovery before I felt like I could do everything again. And so there's that. So anyway, so the first 4 cycles we had 100% of the dosage, and then the 5th and 6th they dropped it down to 80%, and then the 7th and 8th it was actually at 60%, and they were a lot more tolerable, and it was good. So throughout this entire cycle, they have some things that they can track it with. Obviously, they have CT scans. You can see exactly what's going on. I only had one during the 8 cycles. I had it, I think, between my 6th and 7th cycle, if I'm remembering right. And then they have CEAs, or tumor markers, in your bloodstream that you can track. And obviously those aren't as direct as tracking in what the cancer is doing in your body. And so, but it's something to go off of. So when we started out on December 10th, somewhere in there, maybe it was the 4th, they drew my blood and measured it. But either way, I started out at 2,800, so 2,800. Normal range for a person is 0 to 5. And so our goal was to go from 2,800 all the way down to 5. And it's been awesome to watch, like amazing. So we started out at 2,800 and almost cut in half every time until I just had a blood draw last week, and it's down to like 56. So unreal, the progress we've seen, and that's just from chemo. So cool. And so anyway, I haven't had a chemo treatment for over a month now, and that's because after the 8th cycle, Dr. Stinnett decided that we would go to an extreme route and operate on my liver. So since there's cancer on the right lobe and the left lobe, we took a CT scan, obviously, before I had my colon, or my sigmoid colon removed. And then we had a CT scan about a month ago, or 2 months ago, and they compared the two, and the tumors inside my liver had reduced by about 50%. So they were 50% smaller than they were when we started, which is amazing. And so they felt, both he and the surgeon, Dr. Zendejas, felt that I was a good candidate for this surgery. So I went in on April 6th. So my 8th treatment was on March 30th. A week later, I went down to have a portal vein embolization. And so they stuck a hole through my ribs, went through into my liver, and they injected some polymer into the my right lobe of my liver. So it's really cool how they do it, because they can pull up on the screen basically a live scan of what's going on through x-rays and CT, and be able to pinpoint the veins and vessels in my liver. In order to have a liver thrive and live, it has to have an artery and a vein going in and one vein going out. And so they just take the right side and they follow all these veins, and they go in with a like a tube. They fill that up with some glue or a substance that hardens, and it takes place of the blood. So what that does is that shuts down that side of the liver and then forces blood to keep going to the other side. And what your liver does, and it's crazy because it regenerates itself. So so basically the right side of my liver right now is dying, or should be dead by now, I would think. And then the center and left side are kind of growing a little bit larger. And what we're going to do here on May 11th is go in for surgery. They're going to remove that right side, which is dead, and they're also going to remove the left side. And the reason they're doing that is because wherever the tumors are, they're going to want to get rid of. And so what they're going to leave is that center portion, which is about 15 to 20% of my actual liver. So the liver, according to Dr. Zindehaas, should grow back to 85% capacity within the first week of recovery. So what they'll do is they'll cut an incision just below my sternum, about 3 inches, and then go over to the right side of my ribs, just below those. And then they'll open it up, and he'll be able to pinpoint everything on my liver. He's gonna have a 3D model of it. Just crazy stuff. And then they're gonna have the same cameras and things that they had while they were doing my portal vein embolization. So amazing what modern medicine is. What a crazy advancement we have and have available to us to fight this type of stuff. Along the whole way, you can't, I mean, it's just one giant miracle. And there's no way for me to explain that that was just science, or that was, yeah, chemo's awesome. It's great. And surgeries are awesome and they're great. But there's no way that I can do any of this without the knowledge that I have of the gospel and of my Heavenly Father's plan for me and my family. And the priesthood blessings that I've had and everything else is just so. Because of this last scan and the way the tumor sizes are, my life expectancy changed from 2 to 3 years to we're not sure anymore. It could be a long time, so don't start the clock. So it's amazing. Just one giant miracle. Cancer's hard and it sucks. And it doesn't affect just the patient. It doesn't matter what type of cancer or what type of treatments you have to go through. It's going to affect everybody that person knows, and especially the people that are closest to that person. It's not easy, but fighting is worth it. Yeah, it's cool. But that's kind of our story. I'm sure that if you ask Savannah how her last 6 months have been, it would be totally different, but close to the same. I think she is an amazing person. She's been doing full-time work and school and taking care of me and trying to take care of the kids, and my family and her family have been taking care of our kids, and we have so many people that are willing to drop by and say hi or bring dinner, and it's just been amazing. It's a roller coaster. You have crappy days, really crappy days. And you have really good days and really appreciative days. And the little things that, I mean, your outlook on life, there's certain things that just don't matter anymore. And there's certain things that you're like, we have to make time for that. And those things are typically those things that you take for granted every day, or the typical person says, yeah, I need to work on that, or I should spend more time doing that. And that's the stuff that you're like, man, that is really what I need. So I'm just rambling on now, but here's the 6 months of fighting and doing it with a legion of angels, both gone before and yet to come and here physically. They're real. And I'm grateful for all that I have. And here's to the next 6 months of fighting, whatever it takes. We're gonna get it done.